Welcome, everyone, and thanks for listening to the Forgot to Save podcast, the twice monthly gaming podcast where we go back and play the games we always wanted to, but never got a chance to, with you, the listener. I'm Stone, and joining me today again is my brother Regan.
Hello.
And if you're not already listening on YouTube, SoundCloud, iTunes, Google Play, or Stitcher, you can find us on any of those platforms. Now, we're returning with the second half of Psychonauts, a game where last time we were just so thrilled to continue to play, and we're going to see where we are at the end of the month discussion here. So, the first question, as always, Reagan, is, did you beat it?
I unfortunately did.
You did. And how long do you think it took you?
I'm going to say a bit over 9 hours.
Okay. Well, I'm sorry, there's no refunds on that time. But
unfortunately.
Okay. Throughout the entirety of this podcast, which has now been going for, this is episode 14, so 7 months. Wow, that's pretty cool. 7 months worth of podcasting. I have never once not finished a game, and it was my mission to sit down and finish this game, but I did not. The game did not want me to finish this game because on 3 separate occasions, it crashed or lost my save file, and I just got to the point where I could not do it again. I just couldn't keep replaying the same thing. Even my favorite games, I couldn't sit there and keep replaying and keep replaying and keep replaying.
So how far did you get?
I got to the point where the game wouldn't let me pass, which was the end of the lungfish level.
You just
halfway.
made it out of the tutorial area.
Yeah, I got halfway, and
you missed literally the good chunk of the, well, in air quotes, the good chunk of the game.
Because I wasn't able to finish it myself, I did resort to watching some stuff on YouTube. So I have seen the entirety of the game. And you won't spoil anything for me. But I myself did not finish the game. And that pains me because of what I just said. I was literally too afraid to play The Last of Us, and I put it on easy and made it the whole way through that game while looking for all of the bonus content. Mm-hmm. And this one I was unable to finish. I hated the end of Metroid. What's that called? Criteria? I forget the fourth section.
Yeah. No, Meridia.
Meridia. I have never had a worse gaming experience in my life than Meridia, and I beat that game. And I feel so defeated that I haven't beaten this game, but we'll talk about it. But
my worst gaming experience, to put it into perspective, of Psychonauts, which I did not enjoy. I think I enjoyed the opening cutscene, and then once I got to gameplay, I'm like, this is going to be a problem. My worst gaming experience was I was on a binge of, I was going to sit down and beat every Mega Man X game in sequence that I owned up to that point, and I think I had up to Mega Man X8, I think that's as far as it goes up. Maybe I had
only
7.
10?
No, that's the original. Not the X not trilogy.
Oh, yeah, I
the
get
X
those
series. I think it goes up to 8 or 9 possibly. I think I had up to 7 because it just got the collection disc. Mm-hmm. So I started burning through them, and I had played 1 through 3 so many times. And I played 4, and I was like, all right, this is cool.
4 is
and then
good.
I got to 5, and that game, they should have just stopped making it X4. Because X5 was just not good in any way. The levels are garbage. I don't know. There's just something about that game that didn't rub me the right way. Anyway, my overall happiness in life just very quickly sank because I had a friend with me who was also playing something else, and he was legitimately asking me Reagan, are you okay?
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm not okay. I just need to get through this. And that was one of the worst game experiences I ever had. And I ended up beating all the games, but that one just rubbed me the wrong way. And Psychonauts almost got me there.
Yeah.
I almost sank into another vicious depression from playing this game.
Yeah, Psychonauts, the same reason I haven't beaten Psychonauts, the same reason I haven't beaten Dark Souls 1. And that's because the game didn't want me to. It just kept... Games for Windows Live deleted my save file in Dark Souls 1 3 separate times. So I was like, I'm never doing it. I don't want to. The game ruined the game for me. But let's talk about some specifics within the game.
Okay.
first of all, last time we were talking, we were kind of praising the character as far as the voice acting talent goes, but they were really gross and not appealing in any way, shape, or form. But have you had any change of heart in the characters? Also, for the second half of the game, kind of when we get to the asylum, we get introduced to kind of a whole new cast, quote unquote, of characters.
Kind of making the first half.
Also, if you guys don't already know, we're going to be discussing spoilers for the game. So,
yeah, I really, I mean, I liked the characters this first time. Obviously, the design and the color choices and whatnot. It's very, I guess it's just kind of, it fits like the mid 2000s because that's was like, I mean, at least for me, and you know, you were along with that too. A lot of Cartoon Network shows that might have had like bright color palettes, but were definitely on the more like crude end of, you know, jokes and really intense. So it definitely fit that. So I really enjoyed it for that.
Yeah, one second before you go any further. Okay. Last time we had talked about that muddy color palette and it looking sick, and it looked the way you feel when you're sick. We said something to that extent. After that episode, I actually was sick. This is not a joke. I was like to the point where I was so hot, like I couldn't sleep with any of the covers on me. Like my whole room was hot. Like I was that sick. And it was, no joke, immediately after we recorded that and we're talking about it. And it was funny because while we were recording that, like I'm picturing parts of the game over and over in my mind. Mm-hmm. And you know, like when you get sick, like when you eat something that makes you sick, you never want to eat that again. Mm-hmm. I also had that feeling then playing Psychonauts. I was like, oh, I was so sick last time we talked about this. Maybe it was the game and I didn't want to keep playing, but I did. But sorry, that I would have forgotten that if I didn't mention there. So continue. You were talking about the color palettes for the characters still.
Yeah, I mean, that obviously wasn't super appealing to look at, but I really like, I mean, especially the characters that were introduced in the asylum. They were, I won't say lovable, but they definitely added, because like all the kids in the camp are just like snotty kids who don't want to be there and complaining, and the characters in the, I mean, even the lungfish and like going to the asylum, it was all just, I don't know, it was just a nice change of pace, and they just have a lot more personality.
Yeah. So the first time and only really time I genuinely laughed out loud in the game was when the lungfish said that her name was Linda.
Yes.
That was a fantastic reveal because it was like, oh, noble creature, please tell me your name. And it's like, Linda. I thought that was one time that I actually laughed out loud. Yeah. But then I couldn't play the game after that anyway, so what does it matter? Right. But the characters introduced in the asylum are Eduardo, Napoleon.
Not Eduardo, it's Edgar.
Oh, Edgar.
He is an artist, fighting some sort of depression.
So in the asylum, they all have something that seems representative of some kind of mental ailment. Whether or not they meant to have it directly reflect one, or they just wanted to have some obstacle, I'm unsure. Mm-hmm. The milkman at the entrance is very much
he's a security guard, so
well, okay, a security guard, a milkman in security guard's clothing.
Yes.
And he is very much a conspiracy theorist, which is not necessarily any kind of mental ailment, but he's kind of guarding the door. And
he's a conspiracy theorist, but he also is, I can say, as far as the game goes, very much crazy. I mean, you can see it, one, in his level design, but we can get more into level design later. But as far as his character goes, you can see he's like, you know, he definitely is like on the very extreme end of the spectrum of conspiracy
right, because other people were manipulating his mind, right?
Right.
And he, well, I guess if you had to assign anything to it, and not like any kind of ailment, but he was definitely having an identity crisis, which is evident by the joke you just made. He is the milkman, but they called him a security guard, and that identity crisis is some manipulation in his mind that causes him to lose his sight of where he's going, and then it turns out the milk he had to deliver was a Molotov cocktail. But and then there is the performer you see at first. I forget her name.
Gloria.
Yes.
She is obviously fighting bipolar disorder, because her One, she has mood swings. Like when you first meet her, she's standing in a spotlight
Right.
because she used to be an actress, and so she's standing in a spotlight. And if you try to grab her trophy, which you need for a later item, she won't let you, and she won't get out of the way so you can continue further and whatnot. So, but in her level, she has
The Phantom of the Opera.
yes, so it's on a stage, but you have a candle that creates a spotlight, and at first it has a happy face on it, but then when you whack the switch, it turns to a sad face, much
Right.
like the those masks you see on like every
The
stage
theater
thing.
mask, yeah.
Yes. So it's she's fighting. She has intense manic.
Right, you can change her personality at whim.
And that that affects the stage, the props, and the characters on whatever theater play what is going on at the time.
Right, and you're trying to find out the Phantom of the Opera the whole time, so
Essentially, yes.
very meta. Oh, also, we didn't address... Well, okay, I'll talk about it later. We'll continue with... and the next one is someone who thinks they are Napoleon Bonaparte.
That's because he is a descendant of Napoleon. He's Fred Bonaparte.
Yes, and he... I guess it is... He believes that he's two people, or there's this other person living inside him that is taking over.
I think some sort of split personality because it came about. Like if you look in the mental vaults that people have,
Yeah.
the other guy that's with him in the same room like challenged him to like chess games or something, some strategy game, and then he lost the first time. So then his inner Bonaparte was like started taking over because Fred is
A coward.
a coward and a loser. So his inner Napoleon, descendant or forefather,
Yeah.
started taking over for that.
Yeah. And then the guy blocking the elevator, who is that?
He is just someone who works for the main antagonist, who I can't think of his name right now.
Dr. Roboto, I think.
Lobato. That's it,
Lobato,
because it
yeah.
sounds like lobotomy. Yes, Dr. Lobato.
Yeah, and he is a gross-looking character.
He is. He looks like the bully, but instead of an afro, it's just a giant head
There's
that
so
I
much-
assume must have been lobotomized.
There's so much forehead, and it's like it's like a gross cliff face looking at his head.
Yeah.
And it's blue and weird.
Honestly, his head looks like one of those cartoon chef hats.
Yeah, but it's a
blue.
forehead.
And it's his head.
Yeah. And then you go upstairs and you see Edward. Mm-hmm. And
Edgar.
I cannot get his name right. Edgar, he is an artist, and every time he tries to finish his painting, he ends up painting a matador over it. And then you go inside of
And
his...
there's
Yeah. You find out that there are these people that he always felt bested by when he was a performer, I think. Were they performers?
he was a wrestler.
A wrestler, yeah. And he always felt bested by them, and so he's constantly battling and not living up to...
So
their
there's
talent.
a matador that keeps coming up, but because of that, either the main enemy in his level is a bull that keeps charging through and messing up all his work. So you need to help him overcome this figure that is the bull.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's very interesting.
And
So the characters themselves are good.
I think that's where the most potential in the game was, and we could just talk in generalities here.
And I do like so their characters in an asylum, very obviously. But when you go into their levels, and anytime jokes and whatnot are made, it's never at the expense where the actual people are the joke, which is so easy to do in any sort of... I mean, it's just like, you could... It's a sensitive topic. You just make it like, oh, they're the butt of the joke because they're not, quote, normal.
Right.
But the game never does that, and I think that is very good on their part as the creators. Obviously it's not so easy to overcome mental illness just by
Hopping to
defeating an enemy and doing some platforming.
So let's talk about that, because I actually have a difference of opinion with you on that. The humor is, I think, a point of contention for me, and I'm trying to think of where I want to tackle this. But while you're right, at this particular stage, they do not treat these ailments as a joke. They're not the butt of the joke. I mean, you can't say for certain whether or not they're supposed to mirror real
Oh yeah,
mental ailments.
It's definitely a very a cartoon way of doing it, and it's
Right.
not it's not like they're summing it up accurately or anything. But
Right. And it just seems like it could just be to fill out a level, which is fine. Like, this game is not out to make a statement, and I don't expect it to. And it came out in a time where, and I think I won't get political, but we still don't really treat mental illness as serious as it needs. And I don't mean to keep saying illness, but we do. Our mental health isn't as important for us, and being that this is an American company, especially in 2005. It wasn't really a top priority to make it feel good. So they are respectful in some natures if these are meant to mirror actual ailments. I don't know if that's the right word, and I'm sorry if I'm not using the right word.
we're trying.
Right.
We're trying to be delicate about this.
But it's not really accurately mirroring any of this. It is just filling out a game. Like, one of them, you were literally going into someone's mind and reenacting the Phantom of the Opera.
I mean, But just given the story, like the main plot of the game, the fact that they're Psychonauts and then go into people's minds at the battlefield, it was the best way to get a story and possibly gameplay out of the game.
And this is easily the best time for the game. But where I think they fall short, their humor is they disregard so much of that elsewhere. First of all, when you go into the Milkman, I don't know if you noticed this, and I'm not super sensitive to this, but there is at one point where you go into the book depository, quote unquote.
Yes.
With a rifle. Mm-hmm. And did you notice what that mirrors?
Obviously.
The assassination of John F. Kennedy.
Yeah, I mean, you have to run up to it, avoiding bullets that are being shot at you.
Right.
Which, by the way, you can't stand behind an object. Okay, that's more for gameplay later. I apologize.
Yes, but it's a situation put in place to clearly mirror the assassination of John F. Kennedy, who was,
I mean, as soon as in the game he said book depository, I was like, I know where this is going.
I did not connect that until it was too late, and then. I wouldn't say that I was offended, but I was most definitely uncomfortable. It wasn't funny. It wasn't a great way to do it. It wasn't necessary to put it that way, you know? And it's set up at, like, the window, and, there's someone in there with a rifle.
Yeah.
I didn't like that. That made me uncomfortable. But there are a lot of times where the punchline in this game is suicide, which I don't like. Just at that point, that Rainbow Scout, were they called?
Yes.
Jumps out the window, like, lands on the ground, and then explodes herself to, like, kill these other
government
minions.
Agents.
Which is, it's a game. I don't think that was supposed to specifically mirror or make fun of suicide. But there are other times in dialogue where, and I remember, I think it's after the level where you learn levitation. The one joke, somebody walks away and they say, I'm going to go kill myself. And I understand that people make those jokes and you're not going to change it. And I'm not trying to police everyone from ever making those jokes. But when you're releasing a major piece of media, I feel like you're really being hurtful to people by making the suicide the butt of not one. I know that there were multiple instances where the punchline was killing yourself.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And I was really not a fan of that. And the humor turned me off very quickly. Because in the beginning, it was cheesy, and I was forgiving it for being older. But then as it went on...
It almost seemed intentionally campy, which was fine.
Yeah, as it went on, it became, I'm going to say, offensive, if not borderline. And I really was not happy about that, and I'm not willing to forgive it because it's older, because we all have responsibilities as humans to be good to each other and not treat each other like crap. And I know the immediate thought I had was, well, this is really during another peak of South Park's popularity, so how does South Park get away with it and Psychonauts doesn't? And I think that's a really great question, but I think, and people will disagree, I think South Park is a little bit more clever with their their
their
satire,
presentation.
and it's very obviously satire. It's advertised as satire. You know, everything they do points to this being satire, and
Because
I'm not
it's
okay,
way more over the top.
right. I'm not
And
okay
more
with
obviously so.
a lot of South Park's jokes, but this was kind of masquerading as the hero story taking on evil, and then we were kind of sold this package of insensitivity. So
Yeah.
I'm not willing to forgive it for it being older, and I did think on that a lot, but I don't know. That's where I had a lot of issue with the game, and that's another reason I think that I was really not so motivated to continue to play. But I don't. Did you feel that way? Am I being too sensitive?
No, I would. I didn't take that as intensely. I guess. I honestly didn't pay that much attention to the cutscenes.
That's
I mean,
fair.
I definitely picked up on some of those that you mentioned. But I just got to the point later on where I'm just like, do I really need to? And I was watching like other things on Netflix, so I got it like 50-50 on later cutscenes in the game.
Yeah. So,
but no, I would agree with that.
and what you said, you know, when you're going into the minds of the people in the asylum, they are not the butt of the joke. And I
Yes.
feel like that is kind of telling of this game, because it's like being good only when people are watching.
Mm-hmm.
You know, okay, this
Yeah.
is where we're entering dangerous territory, so let's really tread lightly. But then other times, like, okay, we're in the clear, we can make these jokes. And it's sad because it's very representative of Double Fine's humor throughout their titles, not just in Psychonauts. And I can't say that they are all insensitive. And I'm not saying definitively that this is insensitive. I think it's up for interpretation, but there are some of them where it clearly crossed the line to me. Mm-hmm. But we won't dwindle on it because I'm sure people don't want to hear me preach. Unless you have anything else to say. We can move on to, let's talk about some of the specific levels, and let's try to go through it from the beginning. Clearly, my memory is not great with this at all, so you might have to help me out here.
All right, I'll just go through chronologically if you want to add in here and there. So you start out.
So we talked about Coach Oleander last time, so we can skip that.
Yes, I would like to mention. So there is one thing that I think we partially mentioned last time, which was the first time you go into not Sasha Nine's mind, but you like start venturing into your own in his lab.
Yeah.
You see like little lamps that are made of meat,
Mm-hmm.
which makes no sense because you're of a circus background. And then in the last level, you understand why that is, and it makes no sense that it's in your first level. And
Right.
I'll get to that when we get to the last level. But the fact that they had that foreshadowing to something that has nothing to do with your character didn't
Yeah.
make sense to me.
Yeah, and the reason I didn't notice that before was because I just didn't know enough about Raz to say that.
Yeah, it doesn't give you. You know, he came from a circus, and that he doesn't get along well with his father because, he is Raz is a psychic, and his father, told him that his family was cursed by psychics, so he doesn't allow
Yeah,
any
he
of that.
rejects them. Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah, and then we have Inside Raz's mind where we fight the monster, and that was terrible. It's dark. We talked about that before. The neon transition. There was one time where I got stuck on it. Do you remember when you revisit? At one point, you have to double jump to swing on a trapeze, and then grab a big like flagpole. Do you remember that?
Probably. I don't know.
It's a stalactite. They're the ones on the ceiling.
Yes.
Yeah, stalactite. You have to swing from a trapeze onto the stalactite, and if you're not the exact position in the trapeze, you'll miss it every time. And then when you get on the stalactite, you can't jump anywhere but completely vertical, and then will your momentum one way. It took me 12 attempts to get to the end of that and give the tag to like the purse or whatever was at the end of that. And that drove me crazy. But so that's Raz's mind.
Yes.
And then you go
Into
levitating training.
Sasha, did we mention Sasha's? Because you had to do
we
that
didn't.
before
We didn't.
levitating. So Sasha is he's a very cool, collected, analytical kind of character. He's very level-headed, very scientific, You can tell from the voice actor, like his diction. He very much just the way the script was written. He thinks out what he says and then says it very calculated, I guess.
Right.
So his mind, when you go into it, which is not of his not of his choosing. You go in and it's just a monochromatic cube that you're on, just a big cube. And when you start messing with things, you realize that even though he tries to keep it all very collected, things start to burst out from the cube, and it's very intense. And you can see it's like repressed memories, mostly from his childhood, because you see like a kid's bed or like a baby crib and just stuff bursting out. And that's where you first meet the enemies, the sensors that he teaches you about. And they are like little guys in business suits with these stamps that's like that circle with the line through it for,
rejected.
Exactly. So you go into his mind, you meet that new enemy, which annoys the crap out of you for the rest of the game.
Yes.
They're a bad design. I hate them. But you get your marksmanship badge so you can shoot things with your mind bullets.
Yeah.
So you go through a few rotations of his cube and it bursting out of the seams, and he's like, this is not, controlled. This is chaos. We can't have this in a mind, which very much foreshadows the second half of the game.
Right.
So after Sasha, you go to...
Well, Sasha's, and then, you find everyone's memories in it. Sasha's, you find out when he was a toddler, he lost his mother, and you see his father going through that, and that's why you see the toddler. What I will say about Sasha's level, very boring. The first...
It's extremely repetitive.
Right. The first maybe 2 actual transitions are okay, but after that... The platform is very annoying because those sensors that Regan was just talking about, they jump from platform to platform behind you, and they
shoot at you.
Yeah, they seem to land almost immediately and get their attacks off before you land. And if you try to use your aerial attack, he pauses in the air for a moment. So if you're too
straight down.
Yeah, if you're too low to the ground trying to hit them, they'll hit you first anyway and hit you out of that animation. So. Very annoying enemy. Very annoying time to use them. Rather close quarters for as much as a platformer that this level is. And then the boss was just not fun.
The physics on that, if you jumped...
Yes,
okay, so if you go over an edge of a cube, the transition isn't amazing. If you jump over the edge of a cube, you fly through the air. So that's what I use that to my advantage.
Yeah.
So I could just get up and not have to worry about climbing ladders and go on platforming. Because that made it a bit quicker. Didn't make it any better.
I exclusively used that. Yeah.
And the annoying thing is, if you're looking for the baggage or like the mental cobwebs or anything like that, you have to do that every time the cube switches side and opens up a new one. You then have to go around the rest of the cube because some of the baggage tags are on the other side of the cube where you just were on the last obstacle, and then they just appear on the next one. It's very tedious.
Which is this game. But, okay, so we move on from Sasha 9. Then we go levitating.
That's Mila, I think, is the character. She's very outgoing. She's very...
her mind is a party. Yeah.
It is, just to go with her bubbly personality. I will ask, did you find, like, the little secret room I think one of her vaults is in, I believe?
With the orphanage.
Is it an orphanage?
So, it was cut content.
Okay.
And this is an example of, the jokes. But one of her repressed memories that was cut from the game was that you'll go into that room where there's a bunch of children or the children's beds. It turns out that she used to run an orphanage, and one day there was a fire in the orphanage, and everyone got locked in, and they all burned up.
Oh.
And she lives with, the ghosts of those burning orphans. Also, a lot of jokes oriented toward orphans in this. I didn't like that either. I don't know what people not having parents is like the punchline so much, but okay.
I don't know if the room has beds in it. I know when you go in, I think you drop in from the top or coming from the bottom, whatever. There's there's one of those like, not necessarily caged, but it's just a wall that you can't go. You can see through it, but you can't go. And there are a bunch of these like nightmare monsters that are hiding in there, and so you can see she kind of represses Some even, with the nice fancy colors on the giant pinball racing machine that you levitate on, that was miserable to play.
Yeah.
Because bad enough as the platforming is, I realized why the platforming along with the controls not being very tight. Anytime that little psychic ball you have is out, be that when you do your double jump, be that when you're levitating and you go for a jump, be that when you're using the ball to hover to, like slowly descend when you're in the air.
Yeah, you float.
Your shadow on the ground disappears.
Yep.
And the shadow is the thing that makes 3D platforming possible.
Where you're gonna land.
Because when they got into the 3D part, like early platformers, be it on PlayStation or Nintendo, Sega, they all realized that you need a shadow in order to see where you are in a third dimension. Otherwise, it's difficult. And when all of your colors blend together in one game, it's especially difficult.
Yeah.
So when you go for a double jump, which is absolutely necessary in most of this game, you don't know where you're going to land, and that was one of the things that was most annoying to me.
I've overshot many a times, yeah.
Yes, constantly, because the double jump, usually when you have a double jump in the game, it probably doesn't, it has its own sense of momentum, and you don't go as far, it's just a little bit extra, but this one, you can cover the same distance in your second jump that you can your first, so you never know really when to, when to hold back or what have you. It was miserable.
Yeah, and you are not the only one, because I thought, am I just bad at this game? And then we talked in the last episode, and then, like I said, I went on to watch a playthrough so that I could see the rest of it, and that was happening to this person too. So it is absolutely not exclusive to just us. But anyway, her episode, you go through a pinball thing, everything is on a ball, which is not fantastic, but we got to the race toward the middle or three-quarters way through the level. I was very excited. I was playing through it, and I literally said out loud, oh, this is the first really fun thing I've done in this game. And then, of course, that ended very quickly. Because if you hit any obstacle, period,
you come to a screeching halt.
Yeah, your momentum is completely stopped, and there's no way to recover. The second you hit anything, the bully, who's I can't remember, is going to pass you and win, period. I found out later on my third attempt through the race that there is a shortcut to the right side, but didn't get to actually use it. I ended up winning that match, but I'm assuming that if you hit anything and lose all your momentum, the only way to win at that point is to find that shortcut and then take it. But I was so quickly like, oh, this is easily the most fun part of the game, and then immediately like, well, nope, this sucks just like everything else so far.
Because the controls, you're on a ball, and they're like, all right, well, we got to make ball physics, which is fine.
Yeah.
But you have, like, the steering is almost non-existent.
Yeah.
If you're going down a hill, it's going to center
control.
you. Yeah, exactly. That's a good way of putting it.
Yeah. And it's like we were saying last time. It's like just being in a jerky car.
Exactly. Total stop and go.
This is literally the most momentum this game has had. You are on a ball going downhill.
And you will never get that speed again in the game.
Right. That is the most physical momentum and also emotional that you'll get in this game, and it's all just halted so quickly, and this game just doesn't stop doing it. When I played this game, I honestly thought, Seth MacFarlane does Family Guy and American Dad?
Yes.
I was like, if Seth MacFarlane were to make a game,
this
is American Dad, the game. It doesn't know when to stop its bits because they go on too long and they're not funny. It has no real story to it. The characters aren't at all appealing. And it just keeps stopping itself for the punchline. And it stinks. It's terrible. And if American Dad is your favorite show, I have the game for you. And also, I'm sorry. But, like, it doesn't let itself be good. Yeah. And that's the worst part about it. And this, which should have been the most, like, if I say Mario 64, the first thing I think of is Princess Peach's Secret Slide.
Yes.
Those levels are just fun. It's fun to do those kind of race levels. as a break from the platforming action in these games. And even like Jak and Daxter had races in it, and they were fantastic. Spyro has races in it. I can't really speak to that because I didn't play a lot of Spyro, but I heard people like it, you know? This should have been a break from the platforming action that should have been exciting, and this game still manages to stop it somehow. Mm-hmm. But sorry, we'll continue from this point, unless you had anything else to say on that level. I think
No, we'll continue. So you get that levitating power, so then you have to go back to Sasha's lab for to go back into your own mind to cross whatever obstacle you had to do. And that's when you really get to the actual story. Outside of you not wanting to go home and becoming a psychonaut. You see Dr. Lobato for the first time. I don't know why he's in your mind.
Because you are technically in the coach's dream.
Yes, that's right. So you see Dr. Lobato, and he has your friend Dogen, who is the Humpty Dumpty egg Kirby. And he's like, I'm going to suck out your brain, but apparently he just makes them sneeze it out.
Right, he tickles them and he sneezes his brain out.
Yes. So then you're like, oh, well, it was, just a dream, so whatever. So you go back out, you go to the lake, and you realize that Dogen is just saying the word TV, and you're trying to talk to him, and then you look through his ear, and you can see out the other side of his head through the other ear that there's nothing there. And that's when your call to action really comes of, I need to save him, and then, in turn, everybody else, all the kids who have lost their brains.
Right. You find Dogen is brainless. You tell him, watch TV, I'll take care of it. And then you find out Lily is also suspicious and launching her own investigation.
Yes.
So you rendezvous with Lily. You say, all right, you go check it out. We'll meet tonight by the lake house. And then you launch into, where do you go from there?
So she gets captured, and then you have to face your fear by going in the water, and that's when you meet the lungfish for the first time.
So
that was not a fun segment.
The lungfish, fighting the lungfish. Okay, here's how it goes.
Not good. Not well.
Raz, like we said in the first one, Raz cannot be in water because there was a curse placed on his family, and anytime they touch water, they die. I'm all for that as far as the game goes. That's great. I wouldn't say hilarious, but very entertaining as far as a reason for him not to go in water. So you eventually find a way to dive below the water, and this lungfish is a creature that can create these air bubbles underwater so you can survive and walk around. It's not a swimming underwater section, but you are underwater.
Yeah, you're in a giant bubble underwater.
You fight this lungfish. It comes to the edge of the bubble. It will inhale and make the bubble smaller, and you have to break open a box of tacks or nails that it then swallows, and you hurt it. After you do enough damage to it, you have an auto-scrolling section. And let me tell you, auto-scrolling sections work in every game all the time. People love them.
That's why speedrunners can't wait for auto-scrolling levels.
Right. So we won't say much on that because obviously it stinks. It's auto-scrolling. Is that fair to say?
Yes, and the platforming, again, is not good.
And you're looking at it from the lungfish's perspective, looking at your character.
Which I have to say is a cool idea. Execution is not amazing.
Yeah.
Mainly because there are a lot of places where you're like, can I walk on this? Am I supposed to jump up here? And mind you, you're in a large bubble underwater, so not only do the sides cave in on you, but the top and bottom do as well. Right. Which I can deal with the top, but the bottom coming up from nowhere, and the only indication you have is when you get near the edge, there are these like ghostly hands that come out, obviously personifying the curse on your family.
Oh no, I thought there was a brain-eating monster in the lake. Remember?
Is that?
Yeah, when you first get there, that kid tells you there's a brain-eating monster in the lake.
I just figured he was implying the lungfish because the hands that you see are disembodied. They're just hands reaching out, so I always figured it was the curse of the family.
I just thought it was staying deep.
Because if you're like at the lake and you're above the water, if you jump in the water, you have he struggles and you see a hand come out, like a ghastly hand. So I just figured that was the curse.
Either way, there are hands.
Nonetheless, it was not a good section.
And I always found myself it moves too slowly. With every auto-scrolling section, it moves
way
too
slow. But I get it's supposed to be, generally it's supposed to be for everyone who plays the game, so you can, but give me something.
Yeah. Okay, continuing from that point, you then have the second phase of the boss fight with the lungfish, which drove me crazy because the lungfish will approach you. It's like is anglerfish the word I'm looking
Yes.
for?
Yeah, it's an anglerfish,
they have
but
that
like a
little
really
tendril.
big, stocky one.
Yeah, they
yeah,
have
with
like
the light on the end.
in front of its head, and it walks up to you and it'll whip you with that. Now, I thought, okay, there are these clams. Maybe I'll get it stuck in this clam. It walked over the clam. It didn't get stuck. So I thought, okay, there's these electric suckerfish. Maybe I'll throw it on top of the tendril. That didn't work. I said, okay.
After that, I was like, you have the telekinesis. Maybe you can grab it when he whips it at you. Also
Yeah.
not the case.
Yeah, and you don't have... It does the attack so fast, you can't use any of your psychic powers. I found out by accident that not only did you have to lure him over to the clam, you had to bait his attack out, and then the clam would close itself on...
You have to stand exactly behind the clam, by the way.
Or
you can't
next to
stand
it.
like... I next to it did not work for me.
Oh, it worked for me, yeah.
Oh, okay.
But, and then after he's stuck, you go around to his side, her side, or her back, and then hit her. Which is a very annoying boss fight. It's annoying to figure out. I died a lot on it. And then you go into the lungfish's mind.
Yes.
And this is what I thought was the most fun level to this point.
It very quickly became not a fun level
Right.
for me.
So you were like Godzilla. You are in this town filled with tiny lungfish. You are massive, and they call you Goggalore. And you have to try to go to where Coach Oleander is impersonating a monster and break his broadcasting tower to free the lungfish from his influence.
Evil reign. Yes.
You go through that, and they throw tanks at you. It's funny, they have special lasers. They have planes that drop everything on you. And every time I got to the point,
hit. Every time you get hit, it throws you back like 30 feet.
Well, above that, you cannot use your levitation skills. You can double jump, but you can't use your levitation, which is
So
fine.
it's very slow.
It is. You are literally moving in slow motion. But I got to the point with the planes 2 separate times. 2 separate times I beat all of them, and 2 separate times it did not trigger the event for me.
Interesting.
So that is where I cut. I had to go through the entire level twice.
I got the problem where every time I would climb up to the top of a building, a plane kept hitting me. So that just fighting the planes alone took me about 20 minutes because you have no vision. When you're climbing up things, if the camera is bad, and it is 99% of the time bad, you cannot see anything above where your character is because the camera is angled like not really downward, but it's really close to your body. You just can't see anything. So as soon as I got atop of the building, I got hit off. Climb up again, hit off. Climb up again, hit off. Finally, I got up and I had enough time to put on my shield so nothing hit me. And then I just kept spamming my shoot so I can just be over with that segment.
I stood at the top, hit the shield, and let them all just crash into me.
Say I didn't.
But I had to do it twice, and on the first time I didn't have that problem. I got lucky with my timing, but the second one, they knocked me off twice, and I was like, this is so dumb. I don't even want to do this. And then you fight Coach Oleander after that. You free the lungfish, and the lungfish says, okay, I can take you to the asylum. And then, boom, we're all caught up. And that is about where I was like, is this game even worth finishing? Because that's where my game kept crashing. But yeah, we talked about the individual levels within.
But I would like to get
asylum.
into just a little more detail with some of them.
On the Milkman? Yeah.
So
sure.
the first one, so when you first get to the asylum, you climb the cliffside, and then you see you can't get in, but there's this really odd security guard there, and that is Boyd, who we talked about in the Milkman level. He talks to you, and he's like, hey, can I get in? No, I don't have the key. The Milkman has the key. Okay, where's the Milkman? He's coming. He's not here yet. And you just keep talking to him, and he says the same thing. When I first, when you were still in the campground, there's a little store where you can buy stuff. There's this thing called a cobweb duster or something. It's for the mental cobwebs in every person's mind, and you need it to complete the game. They could have just gone without it because it just blocks really simple things where you could have just... Because there are like little doorways you can break open that are wood, and then you have doorways that are covered in cobwebs, which honestly was just to waste your time, if anything. The only reason I had to go back to the camp, which honestly, after you've gone to the asylum, if you already have the cobweb duster, you have literally no reason to ever retrace your steps unless you were doing a completionist run, which I would not recommend for this game. So it's like it tells you there are a lot of mental cobwebs. You'll need the cobweb duster. So I went back. You have to use a dowsing rod to find arrowheads because they give you like 30 when you find them in the ground, and that took me way longer than I wanted to. If you also wait until that point, you have to do it at night when enemies come up, and if you get too close to them, they'll attack you faster than you can attack them. And if you're within their range, like within the range that you can burn them or shoot them, they will burn you immediately when you get into the range. So there's really no good way of beating them. So finding arrowheads was just a huge pain. So I would suggest if you're going to play the game, get the cobweb duster before you leave for the lungfish.
Right, and you texted me that.
Yeah, I did because I didn't know where you were at that point. I was like, you get that as soon as you can because it's the most expensive item, and you're like, whatever, I'll probably pick up enough arrowheads in the other levels because you don't know what's coming. And I would just figure you'd probably have enough currency just from playing the game. Not the case because you need 800 arrowheads, and I had maybe like 300 at that point. They're not well dispersed.
And I mean, you would have to sit and farm them because they do respawn, but who wants to do that in a platformer?
Yeah, no, not fun. Again, stop and go gameplay. Anyway, so you get into the milkman, and as soon as you get in, you're in this room, and he has, I mean, you can see Boyd's there, and it's just, you know, when you see in movies, it's like on a one of those cork boards, and they have things pinned up with like thread going everywhere, except it's covering the entire house he's in. And you know, he has like cows that are like circled and suspicious and whatnot. So eventually he gives you the clairvoyance skill, which lets you see how other people perceive you, which is really not a skill you ever need to use except for the boss in that level. So then you go outside and you see this like 1950s suburban, you know, neighborhood. But it's all twisted and warped and whatnot. So that's the first indication outside of his, you know, connecting ridiculous notes that he's kind of unhinged. So you go around, you find disguises like a stop sign because there are government agents around that are looking for the milkman, but they're not at all disguised. They have, the first one you get is a stop sign. So they're like, you know, workers working on, you know, like road workers, and they are voiced by Steve Bloom, which I love because if any of you know Steve Bloom, he did God knows how many anime. He was the voice of Tom from Toonami on Cartoon Network. Very iconic voice. So if you go up to like one of the crossing guards, it's like, hello, fellow road worker, I am also a road worker, or, you know, a telephone line like, people know I can tap into any phone call, but I won't because of my, you know, high morality, or just funny stuff like that.
Yeah, that I did.
Yeah, those are very clever. You know, you have to find a phone. You're a grieving widow, and in the graveyard, it's like, I am also grieving. I am very sad.
Yeah, I will give you your space.
So those are really good. So walking around his level, you can see obviously government conspiracy because there are government agents everywhere. You can see everything's warped and crazy, and there are cameras literally everywhere.
Yeah.
In trees, in mailboxes, in
coming out of trash cans.
Exactly, everywhere. And when you go into other houses, because you can just enter them, it's a small, like, 2 rooms. But when you go in, it looks like you're, like, fly on the wall, like a security camera that would be in, like, the corner of the, you know, like the top of the room. So it's like a bird's eye view in. And if you go into the kitchen, almost every house has a refrigerator, and when you open the refrigerator, there's then a camera coming out of the refrigerator. So it really puts into perspective his sort of mind. And on top of that, I think the biggest detail is the fact that there are no sensor enemies, because in every other level, people have sensors to block out all the, you know, unwanted bad sort of stuff, but his mind is just so far gone that, you know, he doesn't even have them. So I think as far as world building, again, we mentioned this in the last episode, the world building is pretty decent in this game. They did a very good job with, you know, conveying the world that they want to put across, some little hints in here and there. And then, of course, in the mental vaults, you find out Boyd is the milkman, and he, you know, you have to save him. And the boss fight was miserable. You have to use the clairvoyance to go into, again, another second-person view where you see the enemy's point of view, and that's just terrible because the controls are bad enough already, and then you have to do it where you still control Raz if you're seeing the clairvoyance. So it's very easy to fall off things and die. So not great gameplay again. So I'd say that's it for Boyd's level. Do you have anything to add to that?
I mean, this was the point where I was watching it, and it did seem really appealing to me. And then when I saw it's running back and forth, it's fetch quest, fetch quest, fetch quest.
Yeah, that was annoying. The actual level itself, the way it was built, was clever.
Yeah.
As far as the, again, world building goes, but the actual gameplay was not.
At first glance, I was excited. I was like, "Oh man, well maybe I should finish up the lungfish and play this level."
Because that's like
as far. Time.
Oh, I'm sorry to cut you off. As far as the community goes, that is like the level that people enjoy the most, which is understandable because that's the easiest to platform on because it's just big chunks of road that you're there's not too many small platforms that you have to worry about.
Yeah.
And when you do jump to like another street, we'll say, it changes the camera's always behind you. It'll change it. Everything, it's not like you have to run upside down or anything.
Right.
So it follows you. So the platforming isn't terrible because it's big open, spaces that you can run around. Not so much, doing trapeze segments and whatnot.
Yeah. When this level, when I saw it at first, I was like, okay, this is the reason the game was designed. This is what you do in somebody's mind.
Yeah.
But then just all those fetch quests quickly ruined it, and I was like, yeah, I'll keep watching. Yeah. I'm not gonna. And the boss looked annoying.
Super annoying. So you beat you get into the asylum.
But it was funny when he actually, like, the milkman rises.
Oh, yeah. Because he's crept in, like, a cryogenic chamber with just milk bottles in a circle around his body.
At the end of V for Vendetta, when he's in all those roses.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what it was, but with milk bottles. Yeah. And it was very funny. And then, you beat the boss. The tomb like breaks open and he flies into the sky with the milk, and he's like, "I am the milkman, and my milk is delicious." And that's fun. I think that is genuinely funny.
Yeah.
And then you find out that when you go to the top and he kills all these government agents and these Girl Scouts that are kind of imprisoning his mind and dampening his identity. The milk is like Molotov cocktails. He lights them and then throws them and they explode.
Well, in his mental vaults, you see that he was originally the milkman, but then he got a job as a security guard for some...
By Oleander, I think. Oleander or...
I believe so. But then he falls asleep on the job, loses his job, so then he goes back, and you can see he has those Molotov cocktails, and they're in milk bottles. So that's the first... Before you even see where the milkman is like buried in the level, you can find that vault, and you can see like, oh, so he's probably it. If you picked up that those were milk bottles that he was, so he was burning down buildings.
Yeah.
So that was Boyd the milkman level, which was, it was very clever.
Yes. Yeah, that I thought, with the exception of the fetch quests, and when I was very much turned off by the JFK reference.
Yeah, that's where the book depository comes from, because you find this file about the milkman, and it's like, oh, we have to go to the book depository. Here, have this rifle so you can blend in with the assassins.
Right. So for those of you that might not understand that, a big conspiracy theory in the U.S. is the assassination of John F. Kennedy. So this being a level based on conspiracies, those documents were only just released this year, and he died quite a while ago. Those documents were only just released, so they were using that kind of as a joke, and I don't know. A person was assassinated, a figurehead, may I add, for sticking up for civil liberties. So, yeah, I didn't really enjoy that. But I could see why that joke, quote unquote, was included in the level.
Yeah.
Just to explain it for those that don't have that context.
So then, after you beat Boyd's level, the next person you meet is Gloria. She is the actress that we talked about earlier. She is the stage play. You fight the Phantom of the Opera. Because there's this, critic that's ruining the shows that she's in. And it's funny because there are little children who act out the scripts and the plays that you have, and it's really like, she's the girl, and then the other two play the mother and like a stepfather, and it's like, I don't have time for my daughter, I have to, and it's super obvious, like,
Yeah.
I thought that those little bits were funny, just the way it was played out. And then eventually you have to change the sets and manipulate them, and then you can get up to the rafters and realize there's a phantom in the theater, a very obvious Phantom of the Opera. And then you go on and fight him, and that's another annoying boss fight where you need to use the orchestra pit to hover and levitate up top to the rafters, and then light a candle, and then that knocks him down, and then you can fall back down and attack him, and then do the rinse and repeat 3 more times.
Yeah.
And then the next one, when you actually, so that's the outside of the asylum. The next one, when you actually go in, is Fred Bonaparte, and he's obviously the one with the Napoleon. So you go into his mind, and it's actually you're in like this very fancy what's the word I'm looking for? Like the aristocrat, like you see in cartoons, where they have like gold trim on everything, like couches and whatnot. A very fancy room, and Fred is playing a game of, it looks like Settlers of Catan against Napoleon, and then you talk to both of them, and it's like, oh yeah, he's my great grandfather, but I'm kind of a loser, so he's just having this constant mental. Literal strategic battle with his ancestor. So in order to help him win against Napoleon, you actually go onto the game board and you influence the game in his favor, which I thought was a really cool idea. Again, the greatest challenge in this game is fighting the controls and all the bad level design. But it was certainly a clever idea. It was definitely a change of pace. So when you first go onto the game board, there are little houses and whatnot. So you have to like recruit people to fight the guards, to fix the bridges that are broken down. And it was a much brighter color palette and atmosphere. I will say that a lot of these, minus like the darker tone of the stage play, the Milkman and the Bonaparte thing was very they were very bright and not bland, ugly color palettes, which was a nice change of pace.
I agree with that. Yeah, absolutely. Well, even the next one got very interesting too.
Yes, that is with. So after you finish that, you go up to another floor in the asylum, and there's Edgar, the tragic artist.
Yeah.
And you go into his, and it's all Mexican, like sugar skull. They have that really ornate design for everything, but everything is black, and it's just neon, like all those designs, and even Raz's colors, his costume changes and whatnot. And then you meet all these characters where he's an artist, so you can buy paintings from other like street artists in the game. It's all built around narrow streets where a bull is charging down, and then you can very quickly get into alleyways along these streets. The downside is the bull is quick and large, and you are not quick. So you constantly get hit by the bull, and the platform is terrible, and you have to go through like trapeze and more jumping things between alleyways and little like decks on people's. It's not good. But you get pieces of art that interact with the level, which I thought was kind of a cool idea. As far as his actual character goes, we mentioned earlier he was a wrestler that what was it? He had some sort of he had like a girlfriend in high school, and he lost her to like a basketball player or another cheerleader on the team or something, because she was a cheerleader. And then he was distraught over that, so he like lost a wrestling match. So you can see his high school days were very repressed, and he was not very fond of them. In the sewers, there are a couple sewer places that you can fall down in the street, and underneath it is all like classroom, basketball hoops, locker room, like showering and whatnot. So that very much reflects his character. And eventually, when you do overcome the bull, and help him build a stairway to heaven, if you will, with a bunch of playing cards, you then fight the bull and realize that he is the incarnation of the bull, and he's been holding on to all this anger, and the matador is actually the guy who stole his girlfriend. So then you have to help. The first half of the boss fight is you fighting the bull, and then realizing you should be helping the bull fight the matador, and it's just that back and forth. And then when you beat when you beat the Matador, he becomes himself again. And the girl is like, "Oh no, but I always loved you more, right? You're
Right.
not just gonna abandon me." So he's like, "Yeah, whatever." They walk off. A giant hole opens up in the ground, and the two people fall down this hole.
Yeah, because he realizes they're both losers, and
Yeah,
he had
he's
nothing
like,
to be jealous of.
"Yeah, I wasted my whole life on these people."
Yeah.
So they fall down a hole, and as they're walking away, you stop, turn around, the hole opens again. You still hear them screaming, falling down the hole. So I thought that was a little funny tidbit.
Yeah.
So again, good world building for the characters. Terrible platforming.
Mm-hmm.
So that's like the main guys for the asylum.
Yeah.
And then after that, you just have to climb the asylum further. What did you think of all that? Just watching it.
Just watching it, I was happy to see that the color palette had been cleaned up. It was really cool to see the neon in the level of the Matador that you were just talking about.
Yes.
Everything is like kind of inverted. The whites are blacks, and then all the other colors are neon. It's like sugar skulls. It's really cool.
Yeah.
I don't know, but it's just so hard. It shouldn't have had this much effect, but that JFK thing really bugged me.
Oh.
And I was like, just get it done. And then it got to the point. So the Matador level was the last one I watched the beginning of it, and I was like, I can't even do it. So I switched to just watching the cutscenes, and then the cutscenes were moving so slowly, I put the cutscenes on 1.5 speed.
Yeah.
Like, that is the level of interest I had in this game.
Yeah.
So at that point, I was watching the remaining cutscenes on 1.5 speed because they were even so slow and boring. Just watching the cutscenes.
I will say they did find a use for, so again, there's a collectathon type of platformer, and everything goes towards your psi rank, which I think is annoying, because why give me all these different things to collect if they all go towards your psi rank?
Right.
The thing, so everybody lost their brains, and you have to go to the asylum to get them back. They're just jars of brains that you find sitting around, hidden, some not so much.
Yeah, I watched that.
So when you collect them, that actually goes towards your health bar, your mental health, which is because your health bar is brains, and every time you get hit, it takes a quarter of it. So that was a collectible that I actually cared about collecting. That was useful to me.
They gave you a really good reason for it, too. I think you said because they got their brains back and now they can rest, they're lending you their psychic.
Their mental power.
Yeah, which I thought was cool.
And every time you go back to give them one, he has a quick, it doesn't show you. They just So all the kids come out and it just always starts with, and that's why. So that's why. And
right.
Now
he recaps them. Yeah.
So they have this dumb one-liner, and then you go on with it. Yeah. So it's a nice break if you want to I'm tired of fighting this gameplay. I'm just gonna go watch something and get a quick chuckle.
Oh, trust me, the last thing you need in this game is another break.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
This game is just like a construction crew. You're always like, just get it done. Why are you standing around? Just do it.
Yeah, so after you beat all those, you then have to climb to the top of the asylum, which was just, if any levels were bad at that point, that just put them to shame. I found out the PS2 version is the weaker of the PC, and when the game originally released on Xbox, PC, and PS2, PS2 was the worst one, because if you have too many things on the screen, I experienced some horrific frame drops. So going up to the asylum, there are mice that randomly appear, and when they explode on you, you lose health, and then it messes up your camera because you get all confused and whatnot. It is so annoying. They come... You can only hear them coming out of nowhere. They just randomly spawn as you go up. They can climb up walls, so you can never really get them. You just have to keep moving. And if you fall, which I did very often, they come down to you. By the time, I was hitting such intense frame drops, I might have been... the game probably started at 30, maybe 40 FPS. I was probably down to I would guess 12 or 15. It was... Jeez. Because so many mice were following me, and I just didn't want to deal with it. Yeah. I just wanted to get out. So once they got off screen, but you could still hear them, that was fine. But as soon as one or two appeared, there was a whole horde behind them. It was just miserable. And then you meet some more fun characters. When you get to the top, it's a she-gore, who is the Dr. Lobato's
Oh my
assistant.
god, the most annoying
It
voice
is.
ever.
So if you play the game or hear the game, it's the voice of Bubbles from the Powerpuff Girls. So the really high pitched,
But
and she's
screaming
Oh, yeah.
all the time.
Yes.
It was to the point where like I would turn it down and then couldn't hear the other character's dialogue. So I'd have to turn it back up and then she's screaming again.
Yeah. So
Terrible.
you have to get with her to help Sasha and Mila that you find their brains have been taken, so that's why they haven't been around to help. And of course you're still looking for your friend Lily. So you get Shigor's help to just sneak past Dr. Lobato and get into the next level, which is mostly just Dr. Lobato, I don't really remember the boss fight against him. I'm going to look it up real quick because...
No, that's fine. Then we can just say safely it's not worth mentioning.
Yeah, probably.
That is when your father lends you... Well, your father comes in to your brain.
Well, no, that's not yet, because you have to beat Dr. Lobato, and then you have to fight... Then you have to put everybody's brains back in, and then there's a little thing that comes up that annoys me. So you get Sasha and Mila's brain back. At this point Oleander is in cahoots with Dr. Lobato because he has some, begrudging thing against him in childhood that you find out. That, he's a big army man and he's like, I'm going to train you to be soldiers, but it turns out he was never actually admitted into the army because he wasn't tall enough, so he's a grudge against tall people.
Okay.
That's his thing. So he's in cahoots with Dr. Lobato to get all these brains to make his own amazing army. So at this point, among cutscenes and whatnot, you find that out. You get Sasha and Mila's brain back. They're like, wow, you're so amazing, Raz. Yeah, I know, it comes naturally, all that. And then you have to help break Lily out. Now they're shooting like their mind bullets, so you do that too. There's no warning of this. As soon as you break her out, which takes like 2 shots, it starts doing an autosave. And on the autosave block, it says, point of no return. So if you're trying to do a completion...
autosave?
Yes. If you're trying to do a completionist run, you better have done everything up to this point. I obviously wasn't. I was just trying to get it over with. Yeah. But still, that annoyed me because it wasn't like... There was no indication that if you get to this point, there's no going back. There's nothing in the dialogue that's like, this is the last fight, and, at this point... Because you figure it's already a point of no return. You're going on an adventure to save everyone.
Right.
But it literally says point of no return. If you try to use the bacon to transport to Crawler's lab to, turn in more stuff for psi upgrades, you can't do that. Doesn't even have the option. You can't use smelling salts to wake up to leave anyone's dream. Just doesn't happen. So you watch a cutscene, Oleander comes in, you fight, Boyd finally throws a cocktail and explodes the whole place.
Yeah, that was funny.
You find Oleander is on the ground and he's saying TV and he's like, where did his brain go? And everybody's like, oh, probably wherever the rest of his sanity went or whatever corny joke they made. And then you see a giant tank come out with a brain in the middle, and obviously it's Oleander's. Then you have to fight that. Another terrible boss fight. And then your brain gets... you sneeze it out because there's some sneezing gas thing that he shoots at you. And then your brain you then have to throw into his brain, and that's where they mix in together to get to the worst level ever created, the meat circus. Which I went online because there's no way. Apparently people, places reviewed this game very well. They said the controls were good. They said the levels were good. That's from all the critics. The actual people who played the game were like, the game is relatively easy. It's not difficult until you get to the meat circus, which is they just throw everything at you. And I don't think the meat circus is difficult as far as a platformer goes. It's just difficult because the game up to that point was not difficult.
Yeah, I didn't see it, so I don't.
So the meat circus is a combination of your mind and Oleander's mind, which then harkens back to when you first go into your mind and you see little meat lamps everywhere. It's because Oleander, his father, was a butcher, and that's why everything's there. It's meat, and yours, part of yours is you were from a circus. So you have to help child Oleander, who has the most annoying voice in the world.
Yes, he was in the cutscenes.
Yes, you have to help him save some bunnies so his father won't butcher them.
Yep. And
the platforming is miserable. There's a lot of waiting because you're in a circus. There's a big... it's a cool idea. As you're platforming, there's a big dartboard, and there are knife throwers. The camera changes, and you see the perspective of a knife thrower, and he's aiming at you. So you have to jump, have him throw a knife into the dartboard, and then grab onto it and, swing and trapeze your way to the next. It's a cool idea. Not good implementation because it's very slow. The wheel turns super slow, and when you're waiting to get around, because it's slow, by the time you get the chance to take a jump to the next platform, even if you're swinging, if the knife thrower throws another knife, which he's going to hit you, it stops your momentum. So you then have to, it's miserable.
You keep starting over.
Yes, you just keep going around the circle. And in the PS2 version, before they re-released it on Steam and whatnot, Oleander lost a lot of health every hit. He kept screaming every time he got hit because there were monsters trying to attack him and prevent him from grabbing the bunny. And you only have so much time to get up there, so it's it was just miserable. And then when you have to, the bunny keeps hopping away from him. You have to use telekinesis to make it stand still. You cannot throw it to him.
Oh my god!
So you have to hold it in place, and he has to very slowly run over. But then enemies are coming, so you have to put it down, and then you have to kill them, and then you have to grab you have to do this 4 times in a row.
That's insane.
So the whole time you're in the meat circus, you hear this disembodied voice yelling for Rasputin. And that got super annoying because it's every few seconds, and there's no way to stop it. It doesn't stop during boss fights, anything like that. So you fight a giant incarnation of the Butcher, which is Oleander's dad. You beat him. Terrible boss fight. And then you finally see that your father becomes incarnated in Rasputin's mind, and he's this green gangly guy with ginger hair, and he's a jerk,
and a beautiful beard.
I told you not to mess with psychics. They cursed our family. You're a terrible kid. So then you have to now do more platforming like before, with him throwing flaming knives at you, and there's water coming up from the bottom, so you're on a timer, being attacked and fighting the controls. The platforming gets super difficult compared to earlier. And then after that, you then have to fight the Butcher again. This time he has flaming knives, so you can't use the same strategy you used before. And then your father's also throwing flaming knives at you while you're running around fighting this Butcher. It's terrible.
Yeah.
You beat that, and then your actual father comes into his consciousness, and he's super cool. And he's hey, I've been looking for you. And he's how did you get here? You don't like psychics. And his dad's is that how you really see me? Because, I just wanted to keep you safe. I didn't want to keep you away from psychics. I don't hate them. I am one in order to get here. Right. And then your father helps you, and you're in this collective boss battle against it.
He spirit bombs you. He gives you all his power.
Essentially, yeah. So then you can also become a giant and then fight the same thing. And then you beat the game, and the last cutscene occurs, and you're Mother of God, thank you for letting this.
I don't know if you guys knew this, but you become a Psychonaut.
Yes, you do, actually. And you see Raz without his hat and goggles and whatnot.
When I saw that, you know who I thought of?
What?
I was this is a weird flat-headed Tom Holland. And then I immediately had that thought, and then I immediately was I wouldn't watch that movie.
But yeah, you see him, and then without that, which is weird, and you get the Psychonauts uniform, and then everybody's happy, and the end of camp is over. Oh, and Oleander has a funny moment. He's again, I'm really, really sorry about everything. I just had some repressed memories, had some bad juju. We're beyond that. I'm dedicated to the cause now. So then, as they're leaving camp, everybody's going to the parking lot to leave, and you and Lily are still having this. At this point, he's admitted she's his girlfriend, and they're thinking about seeing each other, and you realize they won't, and then Crawler comes out of nowhere. He's oh, the main commander of the Psychonauts has been captured, and Lily's oh, Daddy's, he's been captured, and then you realize she has the connection to the Psychonauts. But when he says that the main commander has been captured, it goes over to Oleander. He's I've been standing here the whole time. You guys saw that.
You guys saw I was here the whole time. That was fun. Yeah. You say goodbye to your dad. You leave with Lily, Oleander,
Sasha. Yeah, Mila, all of them to go on the next quest, which I assume is where the second game
Ford
will pick up.
Stays back at camp, I think.
Huh?
Doesn't Ford stay back at camp?
I believe so.
It's
because
not important.
he is the thing where he's crazy if he leaves his secret lab.
Yeah. So yeah, you leave on a jet, and that's the end of the game. Thank goodness. Another thing that bothered me was that like they forced the love story between Lily and Raz, and it's like you established so much time that they're children. Mm-hmm. Why are you doing this? Well, I hated that.
Yeah. I was more hoping that he'd just go there because she's another one to save. And after you realize like her father is the main commander of it, you realize why her brain was so important to be stolen. It wasn't just stolen with the other kids.
Well, I mean, not even that. Just that throughout the whole game.
Mm-hmm. Like, he's super against like story? What?
Why make a love story at all? Mm-hmm. Like they're kids. Just why?
I mean, I thought it was funnier in the early game. I mentioned it last episode when somebody's like, "Oh, are you dating?" He's like, "No, I don't have time for that. I'm gonna be a psychonaut." Like, I was like, that would have been fine. But
I didn't mind it.
To kiss and whatnot.
Right. I didn't mind it at that point because, like, yeah, that's how a kid would act. But then it's like it's weird. It's weird.
Plus, they're both weird, flat-faced people. Yeah. I don't know.
Right. And I thought that's why she could never lose her brain, because she couldn't sneeze because she had no nose.
Yeah. That would have made sense story-wise.
Yeah, but he's just like, oh, you have a cold. We'll get that stuffy nose like fixed up. And I was like, what nose? Either way, that's Psychonauts. Let's not dwell on it. I think we said all we need to say on Psychonauts. Give us your closing thoughts, your really quick summary. I think we've answered the question, would you recommend it to others?
I would, in a sense. Here's the best way I can sum up this game. Here's the best way I can sum up this game. It is a cartoon that should not have been made into a video game. So here's what you should do if you're interested in Psychonauts. Watch a playthrough of it on YouTube. There are plenty of them without commentary. I found that. So watch a playthrough of it. Enjoy it from a spectator point of view, because I think that's what it should have been. But there's no way Tim Schafer making point-and-click adventures, you had to expect that the platforming gameplay wouldn't have been good from a guy known for point-and-click adventures.
Yeah.
Those are story-driven games. So this is a story game that had a gameplay aspect come after everything else, which is fine. Obviously, we mentioned there are some rather insensitive elements about it, but overall it's campy, it's cheesy, it's kind of fun. Linda's a hilarious character.
That twist was the fun.
The Mr. Pokelope, did you see the turtle that you have to save for Shigor? I didn't mention it, but she's a turtle that she wants to save that Dr. Lobato is like torturing.
So after it ends, that little scene with Linda.
Yeah, where it's like, they used to live in the lake together, and he's like, oh, you've changed, and Linda's like, I've put on a little weight. He's like, I never mind that. So that was
that was weird and creepy.
Yeah.
And then his name was Sam.
Sam Pokelope, yeah.
Yeah. I just thought of Samwise.
Well, go on YouTube, watch a playthrough of it. Skip if you want to see how bad the gameplay is. I mean, everyone I watched, they all had as terrible a time as I did. Maybe not the Steam version, just because they tried to fix it and make it a little better, but maybe also the Steam version it's a little bit cleaner to watch. So watch the game, do not play it. That's the best way I can say. It is a spectator game, and it's not something that you should have to torture yourself through.
I should also mention, when we started playing the game, I was on my PC and it wouldn't connect my controller, so I had to use mouse and keyboard. I got the Steam link after recording our last episode. It was finally delivered, so I hooked it up downstairs on the TV and I was playing with a controller on the Steam link. It ran very smoothly. Mm-hmm. And the experience with the Steam Link was pretty great. I am very much enjoying my Steam Link so far, and I got it for $1.
Oh, that's solid.
So, would recommend a Steam Link, by the way. That's separate. We're not in any way sponsored by Steam. Watch it. I would agree with that, absolutely. Psychonauts, done, in the vault, not touching it again. I'm not going to even look back at it. I don't even care about the sequel. Psychonauts is done.
Okay, you said Psychonauts is done. I will mention just one tiny little thing that I didn't at any point.
No, go for it.
When you first turn on the game and the title screen, when you press start, it's just a brain with the word Psychonauts on it. When you press start, Raz comes around from the back of the brain, and he's just standing there, and you're like, oh, I can control this. So you can just run around on the brain. And at that point, right when I turned it on, I was like, that's so clever. This game's going to be cool. Not so much, but that's a cool little introduction. And then it also had the little Banjo-Kazooie type level select, which I like. in the bunks and whatnot. But yeah, watch the game. Don't play it. Just save yourself the hassle.
Oh, I forgot a little thing too, and this is really, really small and really quick. I was joking about this being like American Dad and Seth MacFarlane. Things that go on too long. Whenever you collect the luggage, that animation plays in its entirety every single time, and you can
skip it.
Annoying. Can you?
Yeah. For Xbox, I guess an Xbox controller would be B. I just mashed X and
I kept pressing
circle. I kept pressing X and circle because X, when you're in any sort of conversation, that skips whatever line is playing. Usually circle will skip the whole thing in general.
Yeah.
So it would be A and B for you. But
well, either way, it was annoying. I just found out I could skip it too little too late. On to the next. Bye, Psychonauts. I don't care if I never play you.
I am totally done with that. That was a terrible experience. But hey, at least we got a nice, unbiased, non-nostalgic view from it.
Yeah. Speaking of which, the game we're playing next month, we have zero experience with. Do you want to tell them what it is?
I'm going to be totally honest. I've forgotten what it is in the last hour and a half.
That's how attached we are to the next game. We are going to be playing Beyond Good and Evil.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes, with the hype from E3, that trailer that came out, we had never played it. Now is as good a time as any. It's $10 on Steam. I'm not sure what it is elsewhere, but it sounds cheap here, so it should be cheap where you are. It is an action-adventure game. Got some puzzle solving, apparently some stealth-based elements. It's old Ubisoft, so there shouldn't be microtransactions, but there's no real guarantee.
Cross our fingers.
Yes, this is also a game, actually, very appropriate. I didn't notice this. It was released November 11th, 2003. That was only a few days ago. So it just had its birthday.
Only a few yesterday ago, yes.
Yes, and also for the official podcast, happy birthday to you. Yours was on the 10th.
It was.
Yeah, and Mike wasn't here, but I believe his was on the 7th. I don't know. I wished him a happy birthday, but I forget the date.
But yes, November birthdays.
Happy belated birthday to Mike and yourself. We will be back with Beyond Good and Evil next month, December the 1st, to end this year with an old game, because why not?
Hopefully a better game.
Yeah,
hopefully not so much criticism this time.
Let's hope, because if this one is bad, I'm staying out of the early 2000s, period. We're not going back there for a while.
Fair enough.
But either way, thank you, Regan, for filling in. We will see you again next month, whether Mike is back or not. So that is good news for people who like Regan. So nobody got good news today.
Okay.
But thank you for suffering through Psychonauts with me. I look forward to Beyond Good and Evil. Hopefully it is significantly better. But as always, this has been the Forgot to Save podcast. Thank you guys so much for listening. I have been Stone.
I've been Reagan. Thank you for having me.
Yes. And we will see you guys on December the 1st. Bye.
Bye.